But we've got a fantastic guest on tonight, and I think the people of Manchester are going to be looking for answers. And we can certainly say that the guest we have on tonight is one to bring those answers. So let's not waste any more time. Let's bring on Nick Buckley. Nick, good evening.
Good evening to both of you gents.
So you must, obviously, it would have come as no surprise to you, the report. What does it make you feel when you're seeing it now being discussed on mainstream media? You've got headlines now coming out explaining what's been going on, some things that people have been complaining about for some years. But how does it make you feel as someone who's actually standing to take on the Mayor of Manchester role?
Angry, but I've been angry for a decade or two. This report that came out yesterday, there was nothing new in that. You could have just changed the heading from one of another 50 reports that's been done in the country, stuck the word Rochdale on it, published it, and it would have been exactly the same. We know what went on. We know why it went on. We know why the police failed, where councils failed. We know who the perpetrators are. We know who the victims are. We know all this. But what we never get is justice. What we never get is someone to hold accountable. We never have the top of the police. We never have senior police officers being sacked. No. We don't have the head of children's services being sacked. We don't have local councillors being unelected. We don't hold anyone accountable. We just get the same rhetoric. Lessons will be learnt. People were afraid of being called racist. We need to enhance community cohesion. We get the same rhetoric every single time, and nothing changes.
Yeah. Or the other famous quote is, "We've learned from the lessons of the past."
Yeah. Well, the actual report.
What lesson? I mean, let me jump in there. What lessons? When do you ever need a lesson not to rape children? I missed that lesson at school. I always thought that was the right thing to do, not to rape children.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, because this isn't something that is new and just been discovered. This is something that was proactively, covered up, and there's plenty of evidence for that now. And I think the most frustrating part for me, I'm with you, there's nobody being held accountable. You know, the police who turned a blind eye, nobody's asking them any questions. Yeah. Social services, nobody's asking them any questions. And the politicians who did, like I said, proactively cover up the mass rape of young British children. And it's unforgivable.
Some of the senior police officers for this report, some of them may be retired now, but some of the senior police officers would not be interviewed for this report.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
I wasn't aware of that, Nick, but that they should have been compelled to answer. They should have been compelled. Was that a mixture of the police union, the federation, or instructing them not to go, or was that?
I'm not sure, but in this country, you have the right to not speak, for your defence. I'm not saying we get rid of that right, but the fact senior police officers didn't want to speak to this report and didn't want to be interviewed for the report says a hell of a lot. We had something else a couple of years ago where I think it was Oldham, about the same CSE gang rape in Oldham. And 4 senior police officers who decided for Greater Manchester Police that they weren't going to investigate or put any money into this. At the meeting where they decided that, at the meeting in the minutes, it doesn't state who said this. And all 4 senior officers have all refused to answer and all refused to name who said that between the 4 of them. Now, for me, let's sack all 4 of them.
Yeah,
it's called joint enterprise. So if you're with a group of people committing a crime and one of them stabs someone to death, all 4 of you are charged with murder because you was all together. It's called joint enterprise. Let's do that with senior police officers who won't answer questions, who cover up. Joint enterprise as a rapist, as perverting the course of justice. Yeah. That's what we need to do.
But it doesn't happen like that, though, does it, Nick? I'll give you the scenario. It's a true one. The chief constable of, deputy chief constable of Greater Manchester became the chief constable of South Wales Police. He's now been promoted. He's now one of the assistant commissioners down in the Met Police. He was actually in Yorkshire. Not Bradford.
Rotherham.
Rotherham. He was in Rotherham, and he was there at the very time that all this was being committed. And we've got a senior police officer on our team, and he said at the operational meetings on a Monday morning or whenever they had it, it would have been inconceivable that he would not have known about what was going on, even if it wasn't in his district, because of his rank, because of the position of himself. And yet, what have we done? We've kept him in, we've promoted him, and now, if Mark Rowley tops it or retires in London, he could be one of the new commissioners.
Yeah.
And he's the one, when he was in South Wales Police, was talking about shooting galleries. And I don't mean as in rifle range, I mean shooting galleries as in heroin and having these are the kind of far-fetched nonsenses that these people talk about. And it is unforgivable that man is now at such a senior rank. He could be the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And he's not the only one.
No, he's not. No.
Individuals like him are the majority in all our senior ranks across all the police forces across the UK, because they become over politicized. And when you work for the police and you're at the interview board, promotion board, you get promoted if you come out with a new woke idea, a new way of working that will promote disabled black lesbians in wheelchairs with Maori face tattoos. That project's good enough to get you promoted in the UK in the police. So the incentives are to promote the most woke officers, who then create more woke projects. Yeah. That's the problem within the police. We need to get back to basics, where we hold people accountable, where we promote the right people for the right job. Our police forces are becoming unfit for purpose. And I've been based in police stations. I spent years based in police stations as a council manager. I've trained police officers. Yeah. I've devised patrol plans. I've helped the police to solve problems. It breaks my heart to see how the police are failing so badly.
Yeah.
It is, and actually,
and that's exactly what Steve says, isn't it? You know, he can't. It makes him cringe now watching the police, because when we went to the Stradley Park Hotel, that was a fine example of over-policing and abuse of powers. And, you know, he said, you know, I sit back and I watch them these days, and it makes my skin crawl of what the police have become. And it is that you said, you know, they are promoting the diversity sort of hires. Steve calls them the 40%ers. Yeah. Because they want 40% of certain black, Asian, ethnic minority, or female, or gay, lesbian. So it's not the police forces you would expect it to be anymore, is it?
No, and Nick will tell you that actually, when they do get their act together and they do police places like Hume, which were at one time no-go areas, you know, and Whalley Range and South Manchester, it's now you know, at a point where we're going to go back into with guns and Gunchester and no areas where you can go, because they've gone from being, you know, good detectives and good police force to, as you say, they're more concerned with pulling you if you've misgendered somebody.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. One slight correction: if you've been to Hume recently, Hume now is gentrified. You couldn't afford a place in Hume anymore. When I was a kid, it was a slum. That's where my family came from, Hume.
Yeah. Well, again, you'll know Rolls and Royce, where they met in that pub, and yes, it was bad round there. Yeah. But because it hung on to Moss Side, which was also equally as bad. Yeah. But it's, you know, the police force that you and I know from then isn't the police force I recognise now, and that's a great shame.
It is. And let me tell you how we should judge the police. Criminals have always hated the police, so why listen to them if they still hate the police? A police force where criminals hate them, that's a thumbs up from me. That means you're doing your job. But how we judge the police now is law-abiding citizens are beginning to dislike the police, are beginning to despise the police, now have no respect for the police. That's how we know our police forces are failing across the country, because law-abiding citizens are not on their side anymore. How did we fall this low so quickly?
I was in court the other week, Nick, and a gentleman in his senior years was talking about Straddy Park, and he said that he went there on day one, and he just observed and watched.
He wasn't part of the protest.
He wasn't part of the protest, and he wanted to see. He wanted to just see it, and then the second day he took his wife, and his wife was a bit more brave and went across the road and had a cup of tea with the ladies outside Straddy Park, and so he then went and joined them. And on the third day, the police turned up in strength with dogs and armed police, and he was so outraged that a police officer struck a petite woman. He said in that instance he became a protester, and he started to film. He's never filmed before for any length of time on his phone, but he picked his phone up and started to film. He was so outraged at the officer's actions. And so you're quite right, Nick. People who have always been law abiding now are looking at a police force that they don't recognise. The Dixon of Dock Green has gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The public perception of the police is something that they would, or they still do. They don't like bad publicity, do they, the police? So it's quite surprising when you see them acting the way they are and then not being happy about the bad publicity. But just so people know what we are talking about, I'll just fly through some of the headlines really quickly just so people can see. And we're talking about the grooming gang report that's come out from Rochdale. And this report, I think it's been in like 3 parts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Police left children at mercy of grooming gangs in Rochdale review finds. So we look at that one. This next one, which is awful. Police took aborted fetus without telling Rochdale grooming victim. And just for everybody who doesn't know, this actual one wasn't prosecuted because they couldn't prove it. Hence, but they've got a fetus of a child
and
who was
the
raped in the DNA. So that was nonsense. And where the Rochdale grooming gangs are now, this is just to put it in perspective, 12 years on, so this is how long ago, 2 are still in prison, 2 are fighting for deportation, and 5 are free to roam the streets. Now, we've had, for example, Anne-Marie Waters has been on the show quite a lot with us, and she's done a lot with the grooming gangs around that area. And she said that she's interviewed people who have got in a taxi, and the driver is their rapist who was convicted, and they're out. They drive in taxis again. It's almost as if 2 years later, that's it. There's your punishment, and off you go.
Yeah.
There's 3 men who were I think it's either 2 or 3 men who were prosecuted in Rochdale 10 years ago. They were part of the 3 girls crime that Maggie Oliver ended up doing a BBC documentary series on. They've done their time. They've done their 6-7 years in jail. Got out halfway through probably. Yeah. And they're still living in Rochdale. They have deportation notices against them, and they've been fighting for 10 years. We're such a weak country that we cannot deport foreign paedophiles. I mean, the grooming gangs, predominantly Muslim, Pakistani heritage men, but they're not all Pakistani. There's some Englishmen in there. Englishmen are also paedophiles. Englishmen are also abusing children across the country. We have our own paedophiles in this country that we should be hammering and locking up. But we're not short of paedophiles. Why do we need to hang on to foreign paedophiles in our country? How are we a nation state? How are we a free people and a sovereign nation state when we cannot deport foreigners from our country? I can't get my head around it. I mean, the levels of the incompetence and cowardice in our politicians, and it just, I mean, this is a multifaceted problem. It's not just one simple answer, but let's start ending some of these problems. Let's change the law so we can deport people. Let's pull out the European Court of Human Rights so we can deport people. Let's not just blame lefty lawyers. Lefty lawyers are just doing their job, because if you're in trouble with the police, you want a lawyer to protect you and protect your rights. So let's not blame the lawyers, blame the politicians who won't change the law, who won't let us leave the European Court of Human Rights. Let's put the blame where it is. It always ends up in Westminster and at the feet of government.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an example the other day. I can't remember where in Wales it was, but it was the guy who had like hundreds of thousands of images, child pornography, and we're talking, babies, videos, and he walked. No sentence, suspended sentence.
Yeah.
And he was free to go that day. And the point is, what lesson has that taught him? If you are one of the people in the grooming gangs, you go away for 3 years and you're let back out, you're going to be able to fight deportation on legal aid, which is, again, comes down to our government for allowing it. When I've seen the meme, and I think it's fantastic, is that they don't reoffend if they don't exist, and it's all regarding public execution, or and that's a dead paedophile doesn't reoffend, and that's what the meme says. And I think that's right, because for something like this, someone with children and babies, and this level that we're seeing now, they don't even deserve the costs that it is to keep them in prison. As far as I'm concerned, they're a complete drain on everything. And if we can't deport them,
I'm with you, Nick. I think that we should come out of the European Court of Human Rights. We should have an English Bill of Rights that actually defends us. Because is it not your human right to be protected from these people? Do you not have those rights? Do the little girls that have been raped not have those rights? The little girls in Rochdale who bump into their rapists in Asda, in Haywood, which is, I seem to remember that a couple of years ago that happened, and other things. And last week I heard of a Romanian, I think he was, who's fighting deportation and won because he's forgotten the language of Romania. And therefore he can't be deported. I'd be giving him a crash course in Romanian and then sending him back.
We've had people fight deportation because they now own a cat or a dog, and that will affect their quality of life if they get deported, now being separated from their cat and dog. I'm not saying that was the only reason, but there's some of the reasons people use as a defence, because the European Court of Human Rights, the Human Rights Bill in that, is not fit for purpose. The reason why we have this court in Europe, and the British helped set it up and write the legislation, is because last century we were sick of going over there, stopping Europeans massacring each other. So we created rules for them. We never needed these rules. We've never had a problem with human rights in the UK. We created this court to stop Europeans killing each other, and then the British having to go up and fight world wars. That's why we did it. Pull out of it. Let them sort themselves out. Let them keep the European Court of Human Rights, because they need it. We don't need it.
No, absolutely right, Nick. Absolutely right. And how do you think Andy Burnham has acted in all of this?
Spineless. He's a career politician. I'm sure he doesn't agree with any of this. I'm sure he's appalled, just as appalled as me and you. But the difference between us and him is he's a career politician. He's not worried about. He puts his career ahead of everything, ahead of girls being raped, ahead of knife crime in Greater Manchester, ahead of everything is his career, because he wants to be Prime Minister. And in itself, that's a great aim. That's aspiration. I wish the man well if that's what he's aiming all his life, to become Prime Minister. I wish more people had fantastic aims like that. But career politicians never put the people and never put the country first. It's always, what's going to get me elected again in 3-4 years' time? That's all they're worried about, is being elected again so they can climb that greasy pole to what they're trying to achieve. What we're lacking in our country now are leaders, are statespeople, statesmen, stateswomen, people who go, I'm going to do these things because this is the best thing for the country now and in the decades to come. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me, because this is what I'm going to do. And if they lose their position and lose their job at the next election because they did the right things, a leader goes, well, I did the right thing. And I always put my country ahead of my career. And I know what I did was right. And my country will improve because of what I did. And I might suffer the consequences of that by having a short-lived career, political career. But a patriot and a leader goes, Well, I'm willing to accept that because I love my country
Yeah.
and I want my country to do better. But a career politician says to people, what policies would you like? And if I give you that, will you vote for me? And if they go, yeah, they'll go, well, I'll try to get you that policy. I don't believe in it and I don't care about it. I just care about your vote.
Do you know what? Somebody who I used to loathe was Graham Stringer, the leader of Manchester Council. And then when he became an MP, I still loathed him, but he's never wanted to be anything else other than a constituency MP, and he's gone against his own party on stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've come to admire him.
Yeah. And if you want somebody who's done more than that, a conviction politician who I would never vote for, Jeremy Corbyn. With Jeremy Corbyn, you know where he stands. He's never changed. He tells you what he wants. He tells you what he'll do. And we all voted no thank you to him. But at least he had some honour in what he stood for. And he's not for changing, and he's not for creating policies because someone tells him this will get you some more votes. And the person we had before that was Margaret Thatcher, who'd stand there and go, the lady's not for turning. And we don't have those people anymore now because of the EU. We spent that long in the EU. We didn't need leaders. We didn't need politicians. We needed middle managers.
Yeah.
And that's all our MPs are, middle managers.
Well, they've actually forgotten that the United Kingdom Parliament at Westminster is now a supreme parliament. It now can enact or throw away bills and laws and make its own laws.
Well,
instead,
who's going to tell our MPs that? Me or you? Because they don't know that yet.
No, they don't. They don't, Nick. You're quite right. You know, every time it's we've got to adhere to the World Health Organization. We've got to adhere to the European Court of Human Rights. We're in this pact with Europe or whatever it is. No, we're not. We can at the stroke of a pen, we can get rid of those bills and we can enact laws that suit ourselves. And that's the ship that I want to be on.
Yeah, but those politicians we still have now are the same politicians we had 5, 6, 7 years ago when we were in the EU. They're still middle managers. We have to wait until a new generation of politicians come through. We're probably waiting 5, 10 years before this happens. A middle manager is always looking above to be told what to do. A leader is always looking down to find out what the people want. That's a difference.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is it with politics at the moment, isn't it? Is that they've always been unaccountable. You know, they never, especially in Wales, you look, they can get away with whatever they want in Wales because the Welsh people don't even vote. They don't bother. So they've, you know, the Welsh Parliament devolution is a perfect example. You know, a little bit off track, but the 20 or keep it on track then. Nation of sanctuary. Wales is a nation of sanctuary. Nobody voted on it. It was never in any manifesto pledge or promise. Yeah. The Welsh Labour government have just decided, in co-op with Plaid Cymru, we're a nation of sanctuary. Everyone's welcome, and they're going to get priority over everything, and everyone. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Wales. And this is exactly it. They don't listen to the people.
No.
When Mark Drakeford seen a petition, the biggest petition in Welsh history against the 20 mile per hour, 400 or nearly 500,000 people signed it. When he was asked, you know, are you going to look at this again? His reply was no.
One word.
That was it. And then he shut his book, you know, and that's the level of content. He's not interested in what the people want. And that's what we've got in Westminster as well. But there is some positives from it, because I think the public they've never been so disillusioned with politicians. Even the people who weren't politically minded, it's been forced on them in educations and schools. And there's a lot of good people out there who are still saying, you know, no, this is absolutely balmy. And you class yourself as one of them, because you are standing against Andy Burnham for the Mayor of Greater Manchester, aren't you?
And the right reasons as well.
And for the right reasons, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just tired of it all. I'm tired of my country failing. I'm tired of my region failing. I'm tired of my family and friends telling me they're scared to walk the streets. I'm tired of our education system letting our children down. I'm sick of people not being able to get NHS appointments. We're dying slowly. Yeah. And unless we get some new ideas and some leaders and someone with a backbone, nothing will ever change. And that's why I'm standing. Even if I don't win, at least I can show people that the answers are out there. Because everything I talk about, I write a plan for. I'm telling people how I would change this, how I will implement this. So it's not like I'm just coming up with strap lines. I'm putting detailed plans out there.
Yeah.
All this can be solved. We were the greatest nation in the world. We've run the biggest empire the world has ever seen. We created the Industrial Revolution. We created the modern world. And we're now failing because of apathy, because of cowardice. Yeah. And I can't live like this. And all we need is one or two new leaders to show the way and to encourage the people to vote. The biggest con, the biggest trick the elite have ever played on us was to convince poor people that their vote doesn't matter.
Yes.
So they don't vote.
Yeah.
And the reason why they convinced them not to vote is because they're scared of them. They're scared of that vote you possess. People died for you to have that vote. And you throw it away every local election and mayor election and regional election and general. You throw it away, which means all the politician then needs is a smaller amount of people to vote for them. And it's got to such a stage, all you need now is a block vote. If I can appeal to ethnic minorities, if I can appeal to gay people, if I can appeal to women, and just pick your little block vote, that's enough to win now. Yeah. And that's how we've got identity politics. But if everybody voted, they can't use identity politics. It means they've got to come up then with great policies that everybody agrees with. Yeah, and correct. That's what we're lacking.
Yeah, and I'm all in favour of mandatory voting. I think it should be mandatory for that. Before Brexit, I didn't vote, and when I started speaking and after Brexit, my dad said to me exactly what you just said. What do you mean you didn't vote? People died to give you the vote. Even make sure you go and vote. And that's what I think should be instilled in everybody. But the only voting they know of, especially in Wales and the Labour, is they have them in classrooms. Hands up if your parents vote Labour, everyone cheers. Hands up if they vote Conservative. Hand goes up, everybody boos and puts the thumb down. And that's what's happening in schools. So they know what's coming, and I think that these, the new amount of people and the cultural Marxism that we're seeing across the whole of the UK is pushing people to actually rebel against it. And you are seeing now more people stepping forward, saying the right. Twitter's a perfect example. Joey Barton at the moment, loads of people didn't know who he was, unless they're into football. Now everybody knows who he is because he's saying what people are thinking. And that is, we're living in a time where saying what you think is abnormal, which is strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
The last time we spoke to you, Nick, you were going to support was it Lancashire to become its own region again?
It was for Bolton to leave Greater Manchester and rejoin Lancashire. Yeah.
And how's that going?
There's a small political party in Bolton called Bolton for Change who are fantastic, and they're leading this campaign. So every weekend they're collecting signatures. They collected 3,000 signatures a couple of months ago, which is how much you need to get Bolton Council to debate this issue. Right. They presented it to Bolton Council, who then said, "Oh, technically, this and that, and we're not going to accept it." So they didn't even get debated. So now they're starting from scratch again. They're collecting several more thousand signatures because nobody wants to have this conversation. The BBC put this question to Andy Burnham about my policy. But just to make clear, I'm not saying Bolton should leave Greater Manchester. No. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But as a Democrat, I think the people of Bolton should have a say.
Yeah.
And then it's up to them. But they asked Andy Burnham the question, and his answer was, well, that's a backwards way of thinking. He's calling the people of Bolton backwards for giving them a voice and a vote on their future. I mean, let's say it's a bad idea and they leave and they become poorer. Well, they made that decision. Yeah. And I would always rather give the people the decision to make than politicians, because politicians will always make the wrong decision because they don't care about you. Yeah. As a resident in an area, if you make the wrong decision, at least then you made the wrong decision. And maybe then you can learn from it, you can correct it, you can be educated from it. But let's stop giving politicians powers to make our wrong decisions for us.
Yeah, and that was the thing about Brexit. My argument is it was never even tried to be enacted.
No.
But if it was enacted and it failed miserably, it's our mess to clear up, and it's our decision to make, but the point that the decision was made, and again, it's just another decision where it's gone, right, okay, biggest referendum we've had, and they still disregard it. I just don't think there's anything really that's going to switch these politicians apart from fear of losing their jobs, and that's exactly what we're seeing now as parties like Reform have popped up, and they're threatening the Tory vote in the next election, and that is potentially going to scare the Conservatives and hopefully get them to wake up a little bit and return to being Conservative. But it's always the fear of them losing their seat is what scares them more than anything, more than letting their people down. They're not bothered about that. They care about themselves, their money, their pension, and what is going to progress their career. They don't care about the people anymore.
No, absolutely. And we need to understand this. And this is why politicians get away with so much, is we don't understand the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
What do politicians want? They want votes, because all they want is to stay in power. Most politicians don't care and don't even believe or want the policies of their parties. They don't care, because all they want is to stay in power. And once we realize that, and once we realize our vote is all they want, if we can band together and get enough people who think the same, politicians will start taking those policies on, will start listening to everyday people. But the more people who don't vote, and the more people who don't understand how politics works, that's why they're getting away with this, because we don't understand. We have something they want, and it's called our vote. Let's make them earn it.
Yeah. A perfect example is we got a Labour MP in Swansea, Caroline Harris. I grew up in her house. When I was youngster, me and her son were best mates. And I know what her belief is, and what she believes, and what her husband believes, and her family believes. And it's not what she says when she's standing up in the Commons or when she's giving her little leaflets out. It's the exact opposite, to be totally honest. But I won't go too much into that. Yeah. But, it is the exact opposite. And it is just that, again, it's a pretty cushy job when you've got a house in London. You're going to have expenses which cover everything that you desire. Yeah. A nice wage. You keep your house in, back where you're living as well. Many of them renting it out. Yeah. So it's a really nice earner. So it is kind of like bribery, as far as the way I can see it. It's like, do you really want to go against the grain? Look at all this that we're giving you. I don't think they should be getting anywhere near as much as they get. They should do it because they want to make a difference rather than progress themselves.
I mean, the MPs, I think, are on £86,000, about to go up to about 92, 94. Yeah. So if someone offered me £86,000 as a job, and I had to swallow a little bit of my pride and do as I was told, I'd probably do it. £86,000. I've never earned that in my life. Yeah. So it's a fantastic wage for people. Yeah. And to be selected to stand as an MP, to be, for a party, they make sure you're pliable. They make sure you'll do as you're told. Yeah. They'll make sure you're not headstrong, because they only want MPs they can control.
And that's actually why, Nick, I think that the whole of the House of Commons, the whole of it, needs to be, and the House of Lords for that matter, needs to be taken out and independence put in, so that at least we can have those discussions. We don't, they are controlled now by very powerful lobbyists.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
And I'd rather put a man there who has convictions, but I don't agree with all of his policies, than somebody that will turn around to you and say, "Oh, I'll try and get you what you want, Nick. I'll try and." Because that is not a politician I want. I want somebody who's got convictions and who's honest. And yes, they make mistakes.
Yeah. I would be very wary about us dramatically changing our political system. It's not perfect. It's never been perfect. And it's not actually working at the moment, but it used to work, and it used to work better. We need to go back to those days of it working better. If we think we can suddenly create a new system that's going to work better than this, I would imagine we're fooling ourselves. Our system now, even though it's broken, is still better than the vast majority of systems across the globe. So even though this is just a hiccup in time, I sort of think if we can get those new leaders, now we've left the EU, over the next decade, new leaders, new politicians will come through. And I think the whole atmosphere in Parliament will change once these new leaders realise they have real power if they want it and if they want to wield it. The people in Parliament at the moment are leftovers from a bygone age, the EU age. They just need to retire, they need to die out, they need to leave. And then we need a fresh face, patriotic, hard-working, backboned politicians to start coming through. I would give it 5-10 years and let's see where we are. I think we'll be in a better place.
Would you debar anybody that went through the Young Leaders World Economic Forum route?
No, I wouldn't. I don't like debarring anybody, because once you put that as a precedence, the next government then can say, well, we're going to debar these people, we're going to debar those people. So whatever weapon we create now, our enemies will appropriate and use against us in the future. So I just want clear transparency. So if we have someone running for an MP who is a member of the WEF and a member of this and wants a global world, well, you can still run, and maybe the people actually want that. And that's called democracy. But as long as it's all out in the open, what I don't want is shady deals and puppet masters pulling people's strings and people not admitting they're a member of the WEF, the WEF and things like that. That's what we need.
I think it was Churchill that said that democracy is the worst of all systems. Is bad, but it's I've forgotten the wording.
It's something like democracy is a terrible system of government. It's just the best version we've found up to now. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and you're quite right, Nick. It is. It does. You can curse it and swear at it, but there isn't a better system. But it needs to be more transparent. It needs to be more open. And the House of Lords does need to be smaller than the House of Commons. By a lot. You cannot put
parachuting Cameron.
You cannot put in the hairdresser. And I think that's what happened with Theresa May, isn't it? And Boris Johnson put in a load of people that bribed the Conservative Party. They shouldn't be there. But people like, Weatherspoons, Tim Martin, and even though I don't like him, Richard Branson, people that have done well in business should have an opportunity to share that knowledge and to...
But see, I don't like the thought of them, unelected, having a say in decisions. I think, I don't like the House of Lords at all, to be honest, because they're unelected, and then everything goes through them to then finalise yes or no.
But
and it comes back. It's just another layer of government. I think
it's a layer of government that it's a revising chamber. And actually, if you listen to the Lords, the speeches in the Lords are far, far better learned than the House of Commons. I mean, you've got the gibberish Diane Abbott and others that just read from a script, and they even get that script wrong. Whereas in the House of Lords, they are usually, if you're talking about a health debate, you've got professors in there. You got, and that's what I like about it.
Opinion revising, but I don't think any actual decision making shouldn't be left up. That's just my opinion.
What I'd like to see in the House of Lords is what you said, Aslin, dramatically reduced, because most of the members of the House of Lords never turn up anyway. So let's dramatically reduce it. I don't want the House of Lords to be elected chamber, because all we'll have then is another version of House of Commons, which we've just spent half an hour complaining about. So but what I would like the House of Lords to be is governments and maybe committees, we elect people on there who have certain skills. So I don't want failed politicians and retired politicians. I want the business people. I want retired doctors. I want, foreign diplomats. I want people there who bring something to the table, who are not politically connected to one of the major parties, who then have to be whipped into doing what they're told. You look at someone like Claire Fox. Claire Fox does amazing work there, some amazing speeches, highlights some amazing problems, and she's campaigning to get rid of the House of Lords, but she's in there doing some great work.
Yeah.
So the House of Lords needs redoing and relooking at. I'd get rid of all the bishops. I'd get rid of all the hereditary lords, and I would stop the Prime Minister being able to cram the House of Lords with cronies to say thank you to people.
So yeah, I slightly disagree with you. I think that the Lord's spiritual and the Lord's temporal should be there. I believe that the hereditaries should be there in some form, but the majority of the lords, then the working lords, should have expertise from either industry. And I do agree that, say for example, you've had a foreign secretary who's now retired, or a diplomat. They've got expertise as well, but it shouldn't be Joe Bloggs who's cut somebody's hair or something. No nonsenses, which is what's happening now.
Well, that's right.
You shouldn't
and also party donors.
Yes.
Here's 4 million for your campaign. When you get in, I want a lordship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about the Rwanda bill today. What was happening before the vote is Rishi Sunak's running around. What is it you wanted in your area again? You wanted that. I don't know, the new railway thing sorted out, but we'll have a look at that. Make sure you give me your vote and we'll have a look at that. There's no honesty in politics. But something I did watch last night, and it goes on to what you were saying just then regarding the new breed of politicians. And it was the Ben Walker of UKIP chairman announcing it was going to be a leadership battle. And I think that is going to really shake stuff up, because you've got Anne-Marie Waters expressed an interest. She's tried before. She's been non-stop. You've got Richard Taylor, who's a Welsh, he stood for the Brexit Party, who said he might throw his hat in the ring.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of people going for that, and it's going to expose it's going to open up the doors for a load of people who are in it for the right reasons, the patriots, the people who care about the country.
Yeah.
So that's one to definitely watch.
So we expect your name to go forward, Nick.
I decided to run as independent for this mayor Greater Manchester because I'm tired of party politics. Yeah. I'm also tired of potentially people telling me what I can and can't say, and telling me that's not party policy, and telling me these are the policies you need to push, and you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. And that's why I'm standing as independent, because I don't think I'm a party person.
Yeah, no, and I think, to be part of a party, you need to, they say, right, we are putting our trust in you to stand. And in that case, we trust in everything that you're going to say. Everything you're going to say must be in line, or, with our way of thinking, because that's why we're trusting you, and free reign is what's needed. But I did want to go over the key pledges that you've got here, because I think it's important, because there's so many other issues. There's so many big issues that are happening across the country, rather than just grooming gangs and things like that. You've got climate change, which is a massive one. So we'll run through a couple of these, I suppose, now. So your first one there, scrap the money grabbing scheme known as Clean Air Zone, which is, another form of ULEZ, which is another form of, pay per mile and things like that. So in regards to that, then obviously this is something that is actually happening up there. Is it Clean Air Zones as well?
Yeah.
It was 6 weeks ago when I published my manifesto, but Andy Burnham must have read it, and a couple of days later he's now scrapped the Clean Air Zone.
Hey, it's a victory to you then.
Well, I'm sort of joking saying he read my manifesto. He probably doesn't know who I am, but that's not the end of the issue. So what he said was, while I'm mayor, there's not going to be any charging of motorists. While I'm mayor, we don't think he's going to be mayor this year. We think he's going to jump and be an MP and try to get to Parliament, stab Keir Starmer in the back and become Prime Minister. We think that's his plan.
Right. Yeah.
So my addition to this key pledge now is, not only am I going to scrap the CAZ, Clean Air Zone, I'm going to take down all the cameras and cancel all the contracts. Because if we don't do that, anybody comes after me can flick a switch, and we've got a ULEZ, we've got a congestion charge. So we need to get rid of everything. Because my first thought was, let's keep all the cameras in place and we'll give them to the police. Be amazing. But, well, no, that's a scheme for tomorrow, for a Clean Air Zone, for a ULEZ. The cameras have to go.
Absolutely, and there's some people already making sure that the cameras aren't staying up for very long. And
The Blade Runners.
they're in Wales as well. We've covered that one, the fix the police by turning it back into a police force. We've already gone over that with obviously the wokey sort of system. You've got our inspector said the last 2 years of his career, it was you have to go in and you have to do Black Lives Matter training, and you sit there for half a day, a full classroom of police officers who's on the clock. You know, it's not done in overtime or spare time. They're on the clock learning in half a day about Black Lives Matter. So it is, you know, like you said earlier on, bring it back to being.
I'll be stopping all this in Greater Manchester Police. So if I become mayor, the mayor of Greater Manchester is also the police crime commissioner of Greater Manchester. Most people don't know that. And Andy Burnham never talks about the police. What I'll be doing day one is I'll be scrapping things like the Black Officers Group, the LBGT Officers Group, the Muslim Officers Group. I'll be looking, because we don't need them. We're not doing identity politics anymore. I'll be revamping our recruitment policy. We're going to be looking at fitness. We're going to be increasing the merit of people. We're not going to do any more box ticking. We need a Bangladeshi person now. We need a woman now. All that goes. And if that means we end up with a 90% white, straight male police force, well, I'm happy with that, because they're the best people for the job if it ends up like that. So I'm going to unwoke Greater Manchester Police.
Yeah,
absolutely,
and that's it, because, you know, naturally you'd imagine that, you know, there was a height, you know, restriction before with the police. You know, you had to be of a certain height. You'd imagine that, you know, tall, white, straight men would naturally be more fitting for that sort of role, because that's what they're built for. But then you've got other roles then, which I think are naturally more for women, like being a nurse. You know, I think the bedside manner and the things like that are more female sort of thing. They're naturally brilliant at it, and that's you know, that's okay. You know, we don't need to think, right, well, you don't really hear that we need more male nurses, do you?
No,
but you just need more female and whatever.
If you were being mugged in the street and you saw a police officer running towards you, would you want to see a 4'9", 7-stone woman police officer running towards you, or a 6'6" ex-rugby player police officer running towards you? There's your answer.
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned this as well. Sack senior police officers who failed the victims of the grooming gangs, and like obviously you said this was written before the latest report that came out. So obviously it's been a priority of yours for some time.
Yeah, I had a police officer who, I don't know their name, they remained confidential when they spoke to me online. And they said to me, serving officer in Greater Manchester Police, they said, Nick, if we sacked 10 to 20% of all police officers in Greater Manchester, the ones who are failing, and didn't replace them, they said our productivity would go up overnight. They said, we're sending good officers, cleaning up the mistakes of our poor officers. If we got rid of the poor officers and didn't replace them, would be a better police force overnight. So I'm going to try to get rid of all those officers, but then I will replace them as well with better officers. That's how we deal with crime.
I look at it like this, Nick. If you were going for surgery, major surgery, you wouldn't want a box ticking person to do the job. You'd want the best surgeon possible, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and all this is also very insulting to excellent black police officers and Muslim police officers and gay police officers, because we look at them now in any field and we say, you only got that job because of that box ticking. And sometimes that's not the case. They happen to be amazing. I've worked with some amazing black police officers. So it's not that we'll have none. I just want the best ones. And I just want us to stop insulting ethnic minorities and other minorities by giving them jobs that they're not good enough for, and everybody else then judging them on that.
I absolutely agree. And that's exactly as it should be. And, you know, it is insulting to the BAME community, I would say, to pin up that, right, okay, we obviously need to lower the standard for these people because they're not up to standard. That's what it says. And, you know, it's just not, that's not the case at all, is it? Or it shouldn't.
Not at all.
But the next one, then you've got tackle knife crime by offering neighborhoods a vote on stop and search. And this is, again, really interesting because it's easy for the people like Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer to say, we think it's against people's human rights for stop and search because they don't live in an area where they need it. You know, but around other areas, it should be up to the people how they determine their safety.
Exactly. So I'm going to go to the people in every council ward in Greater Manchester. And I'm going to say to them, every year at the council elections, there's going to be a mini referendum. So this will cost no money because the councils are holding the elections anyway. And we're going to give them a ballot paper. Do you want more or less stop and search in your area? If people vote no, we don't want any more, fine. You don't get any more. You don't get punished. You just don't get any more. In the areas who vote yes, I'd like more stop and search because I don't want my child dying in pools of their own blood outside my house. They get more stop and search.
Yeah.
And then when the police are being accused of being racist, the answer is no. The people who live in this area asked us for more stop and search. And as the police, we're public servants and we're doing what we've been asked to do democratically by the people who live in this area.
Yeah.
And if the people next year decide, no, we're sorry, we voted for that. Well, every year there's a referendum on this every year. So next year, don't vote for it and you won't have more stop and search. I'm tired of this being a political football because the people who suffer the most are black young men and their parents. They're the ones who are being stabbed to death. Yeah. So let's give those parents the responsibility of protecting their children, and the rest is up to them. The police will do what the residents of those areas and communities want them to do, and stop using it as a political football by the race baiters.
That's spot on. You know, it's not. You know, I would happily, if I lived in a place where, like New Year's Eve, London, for example, you had that story of that young lad, 16-year-old, who was stabbed
on Primrose Hill. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I would if I was living in an environment where that was the norm, which it is, you know, it's part of the parcel of living in London, apparently. I would happily get searched, knowing that my children are going to be safer going around because the police are being proactive, not being again held for fear of being called a racist because of racial profiling, which is what they call. But you know, where's the groups like Black Lives Matter on knife crime? You know, where are they then? You know, because that's what they should be. Because it is, you know, it's young families who are. They got no alternative. Gang life is what they know and what they live by in places like London, and they've got no alternative because there's nobody around.
And of course, it's also the feckless fathers, isn't it, Nick? You know, that have gone off and left these kids without proper parenting.
Yeah, I'd say it's both parents. It's feckless mothers, feckless fathers, feckless communities. It's feckless politicians who say to us, this is their culture. If they want to go around stabbing each other to death, who are we to say that's wrong? This is the multicultural. No. It's like the grooming gang thing. Weak politicians not doing the jobs we're elected to do. I don't care if you don't like being stopped and searched. If I'm saving your life and I'm saving your cousin's life and your friend's life. And again, if you don't want this, don't vote for it. But when your child dies, don't start complaining about the mayor and start complaining about the police because you voted against this.
Yes.
We've got to give some personal responsibility back to people and back to communities. Because if we don't, then governments end up just being dictators, telling them what we're going to do to you. This is an area we're doing these things to you. No. Get the people to consent what's happening. Get the people to come up with ideas. Get the people to agree because it's their neighborhoods, their communities, their family. And if they make the wrong decisions, well, they have to live with those decisions. Yeah. If you make a wrong decision, the best thing about making a wrong decision is it was your decision, which means you can correct it and do something better next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
This next one, create a free speech charter so everyone understands their rights. I think that's right. There was a judge that ruled that you can say things and it can be insulting. So what? And that's right. The trouble is now that we self-censor each other. Yeah. You can't say that. You can't say that. Well, yes, you can.
Yeah.
We've become a nation of cowards. I have friends say to me that certain conversations I've with them, they go, isn't it illegal to say that? Yeah. I go, no, it's not illegal to say that. But some people have been convinced over decades certain things are illegal to say now. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to commission a free speech union. We're going to hire some top barristers and we're going to come up with a easy to read charter that tells you what you can say and can't say and the reasons why. And I'm going to publish it on the mayor's website. So when you're in the street and you're preaching or you're at a demo and the police say to you, you can't say that, say it again, you'll be arrested. I want people to go, excuse me, officer, let me just Google the mayor's website. This is what it says on the mayor's website, and the mayor's your boss. So don't tell me I can't say that. That will give people the confidence to start sticking up for their own free speech. But it will also educate that police officer who may have thought he was doing the right thing, but then finds out, oh no, that isn't illegal. And the mayor can't make new laws. So all this will have to be based on existing law at the moment. And if it works in Greater Manchester, well, it can work through the whole country, the whole of the UK. I want people to know their rights in a really simple way of what they can say and what they can't say, because we're losing free speech through self-censorship, as you said, and through cowardice.
And also wokeism, because you can be prosecuted for standing on a street corner praying silently. You can be prosecuted for saying "love thy neighbor," or Christ said, "Love one another." You can be prosecuted because it's hate speech, and yet you can seemingly, if you're on a Palestinian demo, sing from the rivers to the sea, Palestine will be free. And that's
just understanding in the 2 tiers.
There's a 2-tier system here that usually works against us, as in free speeches, and not the woke.
Well, you saw a great example of that was Tommy Robinson being pepper sprayed in the face. 40 police officers arrested him, and then they thought it was necessary to spray him in the face. 40 police officers. I mean, so forget why they arrested him, but a 2-tier policing system is, can you imagine anybody else being pepper sprayed in the face once you've been arrested and handcuffed and you're surrounded by 40 officers? Can you name anybody else the police ever would have sprayed in the face?
And that's it, because you've got, the weekend just gone, Saturday just gone, you had the guy standing up basically saying about Hamas, they're not a terrorist organization, they're freedom fighters, they're fighting for justice and all this, which is a criminal offense. Showing support for a terrorist organization is a criminal offense. But then the police are standing there watching that. Tommy Robinson, that was, in my opinion, was a message to everybody watching, saying, "Don't mess with us." Otherwise you're gonna get this treatment. And it does show. And the ridiculous stuff that he's going through now. He's not allowed to enter London, his own capital city. If he's going to do any interviews, he's got to ring a Muslim police officer. He's got to give the details of who he's being interviewed by, give them all their details, and then get permission to go. And even though he was pepper sprayed, he's still in court, I believe, the beginning of next month, where he could be looking at going to prison for it. It's absolutely bonkers.
A great example of the 2-tier policing system. The police are afraid to tackle anyone who's not a white working class male because they're afraid of being accused of an ism, of a phobia. But if you're white working class male, you can get a good kicking off the police, and it's semi-legal.
Absolutely.
This next one is quite brave.
It's a big one, isn't it?
End rough sleeping in 1 year, and I know that Manchester, particularly in the centre, is quite bad. You've got a lot of charities there, a lot of church charities there that support rough sleepers. But how are you going to go about this, Nick?
So I've got 2 decades working with rough sleepers. First of all, when I worked for Manchester Council, I used to chair multi-agency meetings about how we were going to help individuals. They were attended by the NHS, the police, the council, drug services. So I know that point of view. And then when I set a charity up, we created projects around rough sleeping. So I've worked on the streets, getting people off the streets into accommodation, and then getting rough sleepers into jobs on building sites. So I've done all this work over 2 decades. I know what I'm talking about. So when I say rough sleeping, I don't mean homelessness. I don't mean building more houses. I don't mean fixing that huge problem. I mean stopping people living and dying in entries, covered in rats, lying in excrement. That's what I'm talking about. And it's easier than it looks, because most of the people you see on the street are not rough sleeping.
No.
They're just begging. They've all got accommodation. They dress like they're rough sleeping because that's how they get more money off people, through pulling at heartstrings. And the ones who are rough sleeping, they're difficult to work with because they're trapped in a 3-4 hour drug cycle. So they're begging for money for more drugs. So when you offer them help and support and accommodation, they say to you, well, I'd like to take it, but I need to sit here for another 3 hours because I need drugs in 4 hours' time. So if I go with you for help, who's going to beg for money for me to spend on drugs? So I can't take your help. So how we overcome this problem in a year? In the first couple of months, we end begging in Greater Manchester. We end it because it's against the law, but it's legal now in Greater Manchester. No one cares. But we end begging, which stops the supply of drugs to people. In which case, all the people who have accommodation will stop begging and sitting down because what's the point? I earn no money. And the ones who are rough sleeping, they take less drugs because there's no more begging. They're then in a better position to take help and support.
Yeah.
I'm going to create about 3 or 4 hostels in Greater Manchester, which will be disused warehouses. We're going to fill them with garden sheds. So each shed will be an independent living pod. And we'll move people off the streets into there straight away. We'll have security, we'll have police, we'll have all the services visiting these hostels for drug support, for mental health support. They can take their dogs, we'll build kennels. That's not a problem. People will say, I want help, but you won't let me take my dog in the hostels. Yeah. We'll build kennels. How difficult is this? Build a kennel. So all the problems they have, we'll overcome. And then after a couple of months of doing this, we'll then enforce the Vagrancy Act, which means if you're rough sleeping in Greater Manchester, we're not having it. You'll be moved on. You'll be arrested.
Yeah.
Because
there's
the times I've spoke to a police officer and said enforce the Vagrancy Act, and they've gone, what?
Yeah.
And it's 1889, I think it is, and they go bad because they're as woke as the council. I've done it in Swansea where I've been for the last few years,
my policy is not about punishing rough sleepers.
No,
I'm doing this because, like the grooming gang thing, I'm sick of my fellow citizens dying in the streets. While we step over them, while we watch them, while they're having mental health episodes, while they're destroying their own bodies and their own mental health, and then they die when it gets a bit colder. I can't watch this.
No.
And if we can't get our fellow citizens off the street, then you shouldn't be a politician. You should be working for the council. You should be working for one of these charities. And the reason why we don't do it is it takes a backbone. And no one's got a backbone to fix this problem. Everyone knows how to fix this problem. We fixed it before in the 80s. But everyone's afraid now of being called nasty and a Nazi online. So we'll get accusations to the police. Is that the best you can do, picking on homeless? No, there's real criminals out there. But the answer is that person begging is funding organised crime by buying drugs.
Correct.
And they're dying on this street. It's going to take them 3 years, but they're dying. So ignoring that person and pretending you're virtuous because you're giving them a sandwich. No, you're not virtuous. You're helping them commit suicide.
Yeah.
And we need to wrap our arms around vulnerable people in this country and help them into a better life, not support them making the wrong choices and dying.
Yeah, we interviewed again in Swansea. We interviewed people that were homeless, genuinely homeless, and we got attacked by the council leader who said that they're offered a place to sleep.
Bed for the night. They got a policy on
a bed for the night. But then when you speak to them, they have to get 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 miles away. And they can't take the dog, as you say, or this, that, and the other. So it meant nothing to them.
Yeah.
So having policies that are meaningless, is correct.
Lip service again.
It is lip service. So I commend you for that, Nick.
It's again. Let me go back to the grooming gang scandal. We're treating our homeless people like we treated those girls. You don't deserve a good service off us. You don't deserve anything. You're scum. You should be lucky we're offering you anything.
Yeah.
That's how we treat our fellow citizens.
Yeah. We'll go on to the next one there. Promote the family as the foundation of our society. So that's another brave one.
Yep.
In today's day and age. But what do you mean by this?
I mean, nearly all our policies for the last 70 years are slowly destroying the family. And it's the family that keep us safe. The family was the original welfare state.
Yes.
When you had no money, when you're on hard times, your family helped you out, and you helped your family out. And the reason why you went to your family is because they love you and they want the best for you. The state doesn't love you. The state doesn't want the best for you. The state only wants the best for politicians. Your family would hold you to account. help you get work, make sure you pulled your weight and you weren't, swinging the lead. That was the original welfare state, but we destroyed the family.
Yeah.
And then start looking at single parent households. I grew up in a single parent household, so I'm not necessarily criticizing single mums, but again, I am. We now financially reward women to make the wrong choices.
Yeah.
So don't have a husband, don't have a man in your house, and we'll pay you more. And all the reports from every university and every government report tells us that children brought up in single parent households do the worst in life. But yet we keep funding those lifestyles more and more and more. Yeah. We also fund, we've also removed social shame from men who abandon their children, because we say to those men, we'll pay for your responsibility. The state will pay for what you should be paying for your kids. And then feminist policies we've introduced over the last 70 years is emasculated men. We've demonized men, demonized masculinity. Men don't know what they are anymore now. Men have now walked away from their responsibilities. Let's go back to the grooming gang scandal. 99% of all the girls who are abused in grooming gang scandals come from fatherless homes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because fathers are the natural protectors of children. And when you don't have a natural protector, you're easy meat. Yeah. You're easy meat for pedos, you're easy meat for criminal gangs. But when you've got a father living in your house, somebody else knows you have a protector. They know. They risk violence if they mess with those children because they don't know what that father is going to do. So all these policies, we keep damaging the family, which is damaging children, which is damaging communities, which damages everything. And that's what I'm going to try to get away from.
Yeah. And I just pull this up on screen because, as you said, easy meat. That's exactly what this book goes into, isn't it? And it goes into the background of the grooming gangs and how they're targeted, because it is. But again, you come back to the state. Then the state are all too happy to take charge of your child.
They want to break up the nuclear family, and I applaud you, Nick, because I'm all in support of keeping and bringing back and promoting the nuclear family.
Yeah. And we need to bring back societal shame.
Yes,
that's what used to keep us in check. That's why poor housewives used to spend an hour every week cleaning the step going into their house and making it red. It was a stupid thing to do, but if you didn't do it, you were socially shamed on your street.
You were.
When I was a kid, my mum used to say to me, "Don't you ever bring the police to this house." Now you can have police raiding your house. It's socially acceptable. We need to bring back societal shame to start keeping us all back in track.
Yeah. I agree, and I think societal shame, as well as the next one there. The people who hold public office shame, where you create a waste and incompetence watchdog to inform the public how their taxes are being squandered. And I think that's important because we looked into it when it was local council elections, and you got councillors who are getting expenses for childcare, and they're using that childcare when they are home preparing for the next day's meeting. And the beneficiary of that childcare money is her flaming husband.
Yes.
And it's like, that was just from looking through the expense. It's all available online. It says it all. But people don't know this. And if I'm sure that if people were, the politicians, councillors, MPs, it was put up on everybody's wall, like, this is what they're spending your money on, they think twice about squandering it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to go a lot deeper than that. What I want to do is I want to create this watchdog that starts highlighting waste and incompetence. So a good example would be Great Manchester Police. A couple of years ago, they spent 30 million on a new computer system that didn't work. I would want to know who signed that off.
Yeah.
Who would the senior officers sign off? Because they need sacking, but if you can't sack them, they need shaming, naming and shaming, like the NHS. So if the NHS paints a rainbow crossing on their land that costs 50 grand, I want to name the head of service, the head who signed that off. Because at the moment, our civil servants don't have skin in the game. Their budgets are renewed every year. And they can make mistakes, and politicians are so afraid of that mistake hitting the headlines, they cover it up. I'm going to be the opposite of that. I'm going to be the crazy mayor who starts holding press conferences and showing the world all the waste and incompetence in Greater Manchester. And I will name senior civil servants so the people can get angry and the people can start shouting for these people to be sacked. Because once civil servants realise their skin in the game, they'll start working a lot harder and make better decisions. I want a top civil servant going, right, we've got this new project. I better make sure this works. Because that crazy mayor we've got will name and shame me if this goes wrong, because he'll find out about it. So we better make sure this is spot on. And that's how I want our public services running in Greater Manchester.
There's plenty and plenty of fantastic bands in Manchester and the Greater Manchester area, and I'm sure that they'll make a song about you, crazy Nick.
And the reason why politicians and the mayor doesn't do this now, because he's planning for his future career. He can't afford to make political enemies because he wants to PM. He wants to be, PM. I'm going to do this job, and at the end of it, if everybody hates me and everybody votes me out in 3 years' time, that's fine. At least I know I did a good job when I was in and I changed things. I'm not in it for the long term. So I don't care upsetting people and making, civil servants, making other political parties, making the elite despise and hate me. I'll live with that. It's a badge of honour.
Yeah. Excellent.
Brilliant.
And the next one we did kind of skirt over earlier on, support Bolton to have a referendum on if they wish to be part of Greater Manchester. And what the best thing about this is, like you said, it's not necessarily something you support or don't support, but there is a conversation going on around it. And as an advocate for democracy, the people should be having that say to what happens in their area.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's that's as fair as it can get, And then the next one, I always love something like when the Brexit party went into the EU and to get themselves out, or when you've got parties going into the Senedd, they want to destroy the Senedd. Yeah. You've got the one there, give people the referendum if they want to keep the position of mayor. So that again is prepared to go in to make yourself unemployed. And that shows your commitment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Over the last couple of years, when I've been talking about standing, people have said to me, Nick, I'm not going to vote for you to be mayor because I don't want a mayor in the first place. No one ever asked us, did we want a mayor? Yeah. George Osborne forced this mayor upon us. Yeah. There was no election. We were given it. That's why I'm not voting for you, Nick. And I thought, right, I need to address this. And the only way to address it is to say, we have a hole in our democracy in Greater Manchester around the mayor. So if I'm elected, I will give the people of Greater Manchester an opportunity to tick that democracy box. I'll hold a referendum across the whole of Greater Manchester, and we will see if the people want a mayor or not. And if you do, great. And if you don't, I'll go to Westminster and we'll get rid of it. We'll give them the problem to solve. Because it's not a democracy when people can force new layers of bureaucracy on you. And do we need a mayor? Do we need this extra layer? And I might be an amazing mayor, but what about the mayor who comes after me? What about the mayor we've got now? Yeah. They're not doing anything. They're making things worse. They're feathering their own nests and their own political nest. So do we want to take that chance? Keir Starmer said the other day that if he becomes Prime Minister, he's going to be giving Andy Burnham more powers and tax-raising powers. It's like, Jesus Christ, we're going to turn into Scotland. It's like we can't have. I'm almost at the point now where I think I'm probably 80-20 in favour of voting no. We don't want a mayor as well.
And it's the same with the Police and Crime Commissioner post, isn't it? That was also foisted upon us. And they've become political.
I was a big supporter of them in the beginning. I thought that's what we needed for the people to hold the police accountable. But what quickly happened is they became political appointees. Yeah. And I think if we keep police crime commissioners, I think they should be non-political party related. I don't think you should be able to stand as the Labour candidate, as a Tory candidate, as any sort of candidate, if you're connected to a political party, because that's all they are now, is an arm of the Labour Party, arm of the Tory Party. They should be independent people. Yeah. So I'm still for them, but not the version we've got at the moment, because we need someone independent who will hold the police accountable and listen to the people and get the police to do what the people want them to do as public servants.
Yeah. And last question, Nick. Is the Rwanda bill going to go ahead or is it going to flop?
Who cares? Who cares about a PR scheme by a dying Tory government that it's going to have no effect on it whatsoever. If we deport 1 or 2, 3, 100 people to Rwanda, who cares? We're getting 100 people a weekend turning up.
Yeah,
it's
a day.
This Rwanda plan is a great example of we need to do something, but we can't do something. Let's do something that makes us look like we're doing something.
Yeah,
and it's a classic spin of a failed project by a failed government who need punishing in the next election.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was saying, what needs to happen. They're complaining about reform because I think Labour are going to win, but I don't think they're going to increase their vote. I think the Tories are going to lose vote. The people protesting abstaining from voting or voting elsewhere. That's why I think they're going to get into power. And as much as I hate to think what Labour will be like, it's probably the step back that's needed in order to wake up the Tory party. But it needs burning to the ground. Yeah. The Tory party does with what it's become. And that's a figure of speech before anybody reports me for incitement or whatever. But it does, it needs complete whole change over what it has become. Because, the Rwanda scheme, the only word I'd change of what you said there is not we want to look like we're doing something, but we can't. It's more that we don't want to. Because they could have done something. There's so many things they could have done, as soon as Boris got into power, and they didn't, which to me says they didn't ever want to. Yeah. It is just the lip service.
Well, that's because they're cowards and don't have backbones.
Absolutely.
We need to differentiate between them not wanting to because they're believers and them not wanting to because they're cowards with no backbone.
Yeah, I have to correct Dan on one thing. Labour's going to win, but not in Llanelli.
But not in Llanelli. Yeah, absolutely. Stand in the general election potentially, or the potential.
Potentially.
Yeah. Good luck.
So it needs to happen. It needs to be more people who aren't afraid to say it as it is. Like the old politicians, the greatest politicians are the people who said it as it is, not these yes men and women. And
also to have political debate. You cannot go around and say I'm not speaking to him because he doesn't believe what I believe in. This politics. People will say, "Oh, I'm not voting for you because," and you say, "Well, have you seen everything else?" And you go, "Oh, I support that. 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 Oh, but I don't like that one."
Yeah.
So you're going to vote 9 of the 10 things that you want, but because of the 10th thing, you're not going to vote for them. Yeah. And this is the kind of nonsense politics we're in now at the moment, Nick.
It is. There's never going to be an individual of a party that you will agree with everything about them. It's about choices. Politics is an adult's game. And if you're a child, what you're going to do, adults need to make hard decisions and hard choices. And the horse trading, I don't like this policy, but them 3 policies are great and they're more important. So it's horse trading.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I got your Twitter up on the screen now. I'll put it up for people to see where they can find you on Twitter. So it's at Nick Buckley, MBE. On Twitter, but obviously your website here, nickbuckleyformed.co.uk. Is there any other platforms you're on or any other ways that people contact you?
Yeah, I've got the same handle and everything. So Nick Buckley, MBE. I'm on Facebook, TikTok. I'm on everything. And I've got a fundraising page as well on Democracy 2.0, 3.0. It's on my website. I'm really needing funds at the moment. So if you live in Greater Manchester and you like what I say, throw a couple of quid into the campaign funds.
Perfect. And that's it. There's a lot of people who would like to get out and about who can't, or, albeit, maybe their actual ability or whether their job, they might work within the councils or the civil service and they're not able to. So that's what we say. If you want to do your bit, support that way, because these things, they do cost money and people people should be backing people like yourself who's willing to put their name forward and stand up and make a difference.
I like the, when I was an air cadet in
Me too.
In Manchester. Were you? Which
squadron? I can't remember now, bloody hell, a long time ago.
But my CO got an MBE, and I said, "Oh, what's an MBE?" He said, "Many buggers' efforts."
Well, the people who troll me online, they tell me it means a major bell end.
And on that note,
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. We look forward anytime you wanted to jump back on. Obviously, you know where we are. Give us a message.
Will do.
More than happy to host.
Yeah, and you guys keep up the good work. I see it on social media. We need people like you in every region.
Absolutely. No, Nick, I really appreciate that. Thanks for jumping on tonight, and we shall speak to you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.